Heyo, it's Nort, your friendly neighborhood weapons expert. Every Fallout game has its share of unique weapons. Weapons that differ from their standard counterparts, whether they deal more damage, have unique effects, or have a different model, these weapons are usually one of a kind. Today, let's go over every Fallout 3 unique weapon. We'll compare their damage relative to their normal variant, go over the references for their names, and explain where they can be found. The list I've come up with is about 66 entries long, so without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start with the unarmed weapons. The first one up is Fisto. Fisto is a unique power fist that can be found standing upright on a desk in the derelict power plant near the MDPL-13 power station. Relative to the default power fist, Fisto deals an additional 5 damage per strike, which translates to an increase of 5.5 damage per second, but this increase of damage comes at a cost to its durability, breaking after 480 hits compared to the default power fist's 500 hits. The name Fisto is a reference to the Masters of the Universe character of the same name. Fisto is a superhuman warrior that is a master of hand-to-hand combat and whose right hand is replaced with a metal fist. In the original continuity, Fisto started as a villain who terrorized a forest in servitude to Skeletor, but after a confrontation with He-Man, Fisto changed his ways, and now peacefully lives with the forest folk. Initially, it was left ambiguous as to whether his metallic fist was a removable gauntlet or an augment to his body, but the new 2002 continuity has it so that Fisto's hand is actually just really big. Plunkett's Valid Points. Plunkett's Valid Points are a unique pair of spiked knuckles. Used by Yunder's Plunkett, this set of spiked knuckles can be found on his body after he's been dispatched at the Arlington house. Relative to the default spiked knuckles, Plunkett's Valid Points deal an additional 3 damage, 12 versus 9, leading to an increase of 4.7 damage per second. In addition to the better damage, Valid Points also has double the critical chance modifier, but half the durability, breaking after 333 hits. Some references are a bit obvious but harder to explain. This is one of them, so bear with me. Plunkett's Valid Points is a reference to the idea of making a valid point when in an argument or a discussion. The idea is that instead of arguing with people that he disagrees with, he uses his spiked knuckles to deal with them. Steel Knuckles. The Steel Knuckles are a unique set of brass knuckles found in the Pit DLC. They are rewarded to the Lone Wanderer after turning in 30 steel ingots to Everett. The Steel Knuckles are kinda cracked. While dealing similar damage to that of the normal Spike Knuckles, they come at a lower AP cost, making the Steel Knuckles deal 1.3 damage per action point, which is 0.6 more damage per AP than the Brass Knuckles, and 0.4 more damage per AP than the Spike Knuckles. In addition to this, the fact that they're made of steel is reflected by their high durability, being able to strike 1,111 times before breaking. And unsurprisingly, there's no real reference for the Steel Knuckles, just a pair of unique brass knuckles that are made of steel instead. The Shocker. The Shocker is a unique power glove that can be found in the flooded metro near Arlington Library. Oddly enough, the glove comes with a set of instructions. Dear consumer, thank you for your participation in the exciting Shocker Glove pilot program. You're receiving a prototype FSG V118B model of the Shocker Glove. Please reference this prototype number in any future correspondence. We encourage you to make this prototype a part of your daily life and look forward to your valuable feedback. Thanks from all of us at Shocker Glove R&D team. P.S. Shocker Glove prototypes are not for use in water, public, near small children, or domesticated animals. This is not a kitchen appliance and should not be used near uncooked food. Use of Shocker Glove prototype constitutes a binding agreement to hold the manufacturer harmless for any and all legal purposes. During prolonged use, severe electrical burns may occur. Do not look directly at the Shocker Glove while operating. Some prototype models have proven sensitive to certain radio frequencies during use. If you suspect radio interference, please submit a malfunction report listing FCC broadcast frequencies in operation at the time, and report to the nearest emergency medical facility in your area. Whew, that's a doozy. The Shocker shares nearly all the same traits as the default Power Glove, except it deals an additional 25 points of damage to all robots, making it extremely effective against them, and it costs 1 less AP per swing in VATS. But it can strike 400 times before breaking as compared to the Power Fist's 500 durability. Now the references for the Shocker are a bit weird. The instructions indicate that it's meant to be a civilian product, as your typical consumer can purchase a prototype model. Now the fist is not supposed to be used in water, in public, near children or domesticated animals, on uncooked food, or in the kitchen. Prolonged use could result in burns, and it's sensitive to radio frequencies. So what is it supposed to be used for? Well, I'll leave that up to your imagination. But when you Google the shocker, you get two results. 1, a hand gesture. Surely that's not it. And 2, a 1967 Marvel comic villain that uses a pair of vibro-shock gauntlets to create powerful blasts of air. The name and use of gauntlets match up, but the Fallout shocker doesn't use blasts of air. Looks like this one's a bit of a mystery. Sorry, folks. On to the melee weapons. Ant's Sting. Ant's Sting is a unique knife used by the antagonizer. It can be acquired by completing the side quest The Superhuman Gambit, where you side with the antagonizer, trading the Mechanist costume for the weapon. Even though Ant's Sting has similar stats to that of the default knife, Ant's Sting applies a stacking poison damage over time effect. Because there's no cap to the amount of poison stacks, the Ant's Sting can reach a ridiculously high damage per second. Additionally, Ant's Sting has 2.5 times the durability of a regular knife. Some ants defend themselves by stinging their foe and injecting them with venom. The venom can cause an intense burning, hence why the knife is called Ant's Sting. Board of Education. The Board of Education is the unique variant of the nail board. It can be found underneath a bed inside one of the clifftop shacks. The Board of Education is better in all categories when compared to the standard nail board. 12 damage versus 8, it can crit while the normal nail board cannot, and it has better durability, lasting for 250 hits versus 150. The phrase Board of Education was commonly inscribed on paddles that were used for corporal punishment back in the day. It's a bit of a cruel pun on the governing body of education in most countries. Butch's Toothpick. Butch's Toothpick is Butch Deloria's unique switchblade. He'll be carrying the blade during the Trouble on the Homefront side quest. Now his switchblade is pretty cracked compared to the normal switchblade. Double damage, nearly double damage per AP cost, better crit multiplier, but like many unique weapons so far, worse durability. 300 swings versus 400. There's this style of knife called the Texas Toothpick. It's a slender folding blade, so Butch's blade is exactly that, a toothpick knife. A slender blade that can collapse. And when Butch is found in the Muddy Rudder bar, he can sometimes be seen picking at his teeth with the knife, really sticking home the comparison. Electro Suppressor. The Electro Suppressor is a unique version of the shock baton found in the engine room of Mothership Zeta during the generator destruction sequence of the main quest. And this baton is quite different from the shock baton. For starters, it doesn't actually deal any shock damage, but it does have a unique effect upon critical strikes. When you crit, your target will fall to the ground, stunned for 2 seconds, allowing you to get some cheap shots in. There's not really any reference that I could find during my research. It's just a baton that's used to detain and control prisoners. An electric suppressing weapon, if you will. Fox's Super Sledge. Fox's Super Sledge is Fox's Super Sledge. It's possible to obtain this by trading with Fox while he's escorting you to the Gek in Vault 87. It deals an additional 7 damage per strike and can be swung 25 more times before breaking when compared to a normal Super Sledge. Again, no real reference, it's just a companion's weapon. Fertilizer Shovel. Fertilizer Shovel is a unique shovel that Croatoa can give the Lone Wanderer after passing a speech check or using the Child at Heart perk. Croatoa warns the Lone Wanderer to not cut themselves on it as it will make you sick, and this is reflected in the weapon stats. The Fertilizer Shovel not only deals an additional 3 damage per strike, but also applies a poison damage over time debuff. Like the Ant Sting, this debuff can stack, leading to crazy amounts of damage per second. It also has got one of the longest reaches in the game, so it's a pretty solid weapon. Again, no real reference, just a shovel that was used to haul fertilizer. Highwayman's Friend. The Highwayman's Friend is a unique tire iron found sitting on a shelf in Dominic and Machete's house in Canterbury Commons. Nothing too remarkable about this one, 4 extra damage and better durability, but it weighs a bit more than the standard tire iron. So the Highwayman's Friend is a play on words for a plunger, also known as a plumber's friend. So while a plumber's friend is a plunger, a highwayman's friend is a tire iron. Now, while a highwayman is usually a term for a highway robber, Fallout has its own highwayman, the Christless Highwayman, and this car's best friend would seem to be a tire iron. Jack. I think you'll figure this one out pretty quickly. Jack is a unique variant of the Ripper. It can be found in the Deathclaw Sanctuary after the completion of the main quest, The Waters of Life. Jack is found on the body of a dead Enclave officer in the Sanctuary. So, unlike the default Ripper, Jack can crit. This is important because the Ripper hits over 30 times per second, each hit with an independent chance to crit. So even though Jack has the same damage as the default Ripper, its damage ceiling is much higher. In addition to this, it has the unique 1.5 times limb damage effect and is more durable than the standard Ripper. It should come as no surprise that Jack is a reference to the unidentified London serial killer that operated in the late 1800s, Jack the Ripper. Jingwei's Shock Sword. Jingwei's Shock Sword is one of the unique Chinese officers' swords. It can be found in the Outcast Outpost's locked armory after completing the Anchorage Reclamation simulation. It is the strongest of the officer's sword variants. It's got an additional 25 points of damage, and that, combined with its shock damage over time effect, allows the blade to reach over 80 damage per second. But this also comes with some downsides. Or one specific downside rather, and that is its atrocious durability. It takes only 486 strikes before breaking, while the standard variant lasts for 1000 strikes. Man Opener. The Man Opener is a unique auto axe that can be found on a bed in the back of the supply plant in the pit steel yard. The Man Opener shares similar stats to its default variant, with one important unique effect. The Man Opener ignores damage resistance, making it a great tool for armored foes. Flavor-wise, this is one of my favorite unique weapons. Think about it, it's called a man opener, and it's good at cutting through an armor that a man is wearing, right? Well, that's what a can opener is good for as well. You can use a can opener to open a can, you can use a man opener to open a man. It makes sense. Occam's Razor. Occam's Razor is a unique combat knife wielded by the leader of the Talon Company, Commander Jabsco. And thusly so, it can be found on his body after being dispatched at Fort Bannister. Compared to the standard combat knife, Occam's Razor deals an additional 3 damage, 10 versus 7, and has a slightly lower durability, 1200 strikes versus 1286 strikes. The name of the blade is a reference to the idea that when presented with two equally probable solutions, the simplest one is often the correct one. For example, the idiom, "when you hear hoofbeats, think of horses, not zebras," is an example of Occam's Razor. Now for the question of how it being named Occam's Razor pertains to Fallout 3, well, the simplest solution would be that there is no meaning behind it. It's just called Occam's Razor because it's a knife pun. That's it. A razor is sharp, a knife is sharp. Bing bam boom. Repellent Stick. The Repellent Stick is the first true unique weapon to make the list, having no other variants. Moira offers the stick to the Lone Wanderer during the mole rat portion of the Wasteland Survival Guide quest. Her instructions on how to use the stick are easy to follow. One tap with the applicator and it overwhelms the mole rat's senses with a sort of feel-bad sensation. Then they're gone before you know it. And she's not wrong. One tap with the stick and the mole rat begins to smoke. 5 seconds later and their head explodes. Gone before you know it. Alternatively, 2 taps causes their head to explode instantaneously. No need to wait around. The stick deals 5 damage per swing and at 2.3 attacks per second, brings the DPS of the stick to 11.5 damage per second. Not really a heavy hitter this one. And it doesn't really have a reference, it's just a stick with some chemicals on the end of it. Ritual Knife. The Ritual Knife is used by the swamp folk of Point Lookout for their rituals. It can be found in the caves beneath the ritual site, stuck in a skull on the sacrificial table after beginning the Dark Heart of Blackhall side quest. It is the strongest obtainable knife in the game from a per swing perspective, dealing 1.5 times that of the standard knife. Plus it has a 3 times crit modifier compared to the 1 times modifier on the normal knife. It has the best durability of all the knives in the game, being able to strike 1333 times before breaking. Now, with a basic name like Ritual Knife, it likely comes as no surprise that there's no specific reference for it, but all the Dunwich, Krivbekny, and Blackhall stuff is all heavily influenced and inspired from H.P. Lovecraft's works. Samurai's Sword. The Samurai Sword is the second unique Chinese officer's sword on the list. Hear me out. So the Samurai Sword looks nothing like the Chinese officer's sword, right? It looks more like a katana. But the katana doesn't exist in Fallout 3. Well, it does exist, but not in-game. A beta version of the katana was cut from the Mothership Zeta DLC. We would later see it implemented in Fallout New Vegas through the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC. Anyway, because the Samurai Sword is repaired using Chinese officers' swords, it counts as a variant of the Chinese officer's sword. It can be found in the waste disposal area of Mothership Zeta. As for damage, it deals 2.4 times that of a standard officer's sword, and it has a lower AP cost when used in VATS. Fun fact, the Samurai Sword is the oldest weapon in Fallout 3. As I've already mentioned, the Samurai Sword is a reference to the katana, a type of Japanese sword used by the samurai. Slasher Knife. The Slasher Knife is a unique blade that can be only obtained in the Tranquility Lane simulation or through console commands. Remember moments ago when I said that the ritual knife was quite strong? Well, at least I made sure to mention that it was the strongest obtainable knife. For knives that can only be used in a very specific situation, like in a simulation, the slasher knife is the strongest, dealing over 12 times that of the regular knife. Its ludicrous damage results in dismembering quite often. It can be swung 400 times before breaking, and it doesn't really have a reference outside of it being the knife that a famous child serial killer, the pint-sized slasher, supposedly used, which the character itself could be seen as a reference to classic slasher movie villains. Stab Happy. Stab Happy is a unique combat knife that can be found on a raider in the raid shack east of the Bethesda ruins. Funny thing about this knife is that although it's unique by name and stats, it's actually possible to get multiple copies of it, for the raider that carries the knife respawns every 72 in-game hours. Stab Happy is the very best possible version of the combat knife. Although it shares similar damage to Occam's razor per swing, Stab Happy has 4 times the crit modifier compared to Occam's razor's 3 times crit modifier. Because of this, Stab Happy crits quite often and can even reach 100% crit chance. This, paired with its 17 AP cost, makes it quite the lethal blade. I believe the blade is a reference to the slang term used for someone who is a little too excited when around knives, similar to trigger happy. And of course, because it's found on a raider, the people who tend to be quite crazed and murderous, the name is fitting. Outside of that, there's not much else to Stab Happy. The Break. The Break is a unique version of the pool cue. It can be found on a pool table in the center of Paradise Falls. The pool cue and subsequently the Break are some of the weakest melee weapons in the game, but if you really want to use a pool cue, the Break is the much needed upgrade. For starters, it deals double damage, 6 versus 3, and the Break can crit. Plus, it has double the durability as well, breaking in 667 strikes compared to 333. The term "the break" is typically considered to be the first shot in a game of pool or billiards. It is the shot that breaks up the triangular formation that the other pool balls start in. The Dismember is the unique version of Point Lookout's axe. It is given as a reward for completing the Plix Safari side quest. It deals an additional 5 damage per swing, and deals an additional 10 damage on crits when compared to the regular axe. It also has slightly lower durability at 480 strikes until breaking compared to the axe's 500. Also, for some reason, its cap value is less than the normal axe, 55 caps versus 60 caps. It's kinda odd. The name is a reference to a unique characteristic of the axe. When an enemy is dispatched using the Dismember, there's an 80% chance for all their limbs to sever. If a corpse is struck, all the limbs burst into pieces, similar to the Bloody Mess perk. The Dismember stays true to its name. The Mauler. The Mauler is the second unique auto axe. Once 80 steel ingots are turned into Everett, he will reward the Lone Wanderer with a Mauler, a weapon that has mauled trogs and ghouls from the pit to Monroeville. The Mauler is the strongest, yet also most fragile of all the auto axe variants. It deals a whopping 45 damage compared to the auto axe's 35, and comes at a lower action point cost, but it can only strike 356 times before breaking as opposed to the auto axe's 457 strikes. So the Mauler could have a couple references, or in Occam's razor fashion, none at all. It's a spinning blade, it mauls people it touches, it could be as simple as that. If we want to do a bit of reaching, the name the Mauler could also be a reference to Pittsburgh's short-lived United States Football League team, the Pittsburgh Maulers. Or if we reach even further, it could be a reference to the competitive battle robot, the Mauler, which would attempt to destroy other robots by using its horizontal spinning disc. I'd be surprised if this was the actual reference, but it's a fun coincidence nonetheless. The Tenderizer. The Tenderizer is a unique sledgehammer found inside the Anchorage Memorial. It deals 10 more damage and an additional 5 damage after critting when compared to the standard sledgehammer. Now, the Tenderizer actually has a unique effect that was cut from the game that provides some context to its name. On hit, the Tenderizer was meant to remove 5 points of damage resist from the target. That means that each consecutive swing on the target would deal more damage. You would literally be tenderizing your target, softening them up for the next hit. Toy Knife. The Toy Knife is a unique knife and likely the worst weapon in the game. Found south of the Turtle Dove detention camp, the Toy Knife is resting on a box alongside a hockey mask. A potential serial killer costume, perhaps? The Toy Knife deals a measly 1 damage and can be swung about 200 times before breaking, making it quite useless. Because it's found alongside a hockey mask, it's likely a reference to Jason in the Friday the 13th movies. Jason wears a hockey mask and wields a knife. In most of the movies, he's attacking teens at and around a summer camp. Except for Jason X, that was something else. Trench Knife. The Trench Knife is the last unique combat knife in Fallout 3. It's found in the Outcast Outpost Armory after beating the Anchorage Reclamation simulation. Combat-wise, it shares the exact same stats as the normal combat knife, but what makes it unique is the spiked handguard along the handle. Apologies if this is quite obvious, but it's just bound to happen with some of these weapons. The Fallout 3 trench knife is a reference to the American's trench knife that saw many combat tours. Let's do a small history lesson, shall we? Blades, and shortly after handguards for blades, have been around for quite a long time. But it wasn't until World War I that someone thought of adding brass knuckles and a spiked pommel to the end of a knife. When Americans first joined World War I, they were using the M1917 trench knife, a flimsy triangular blade that was meant solely for stabbing. And while the blade today would be deemed illegal by the Geneva Convention rules, American soldiers soon moved on to the M1918 trench knife, which looks an awfully lot similar to the Fallout 3 trench knife. There you go. Vampire's Edge. The last unique melee weapon is the unique Chinese officer's sword, Vampire's Edge. The blade can be found in Vance's sword cabinet in his room at Meresti Metro Station. The Vampire's Edge does a little bit more damage than the standard officer's sword, 15 vs 10, but it has a 3 times crit modifier compared to 2 times. Because of this, and its low weight, it's a great all-around sword. It can strike 1,000 times before breaking. The name comes from the family's vampire culture. Vance calls himself and his followers vampires. Swords have sharp edges. Vampire's Edge. Also, because he doesn't carry it on his person, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to assume that the sword serves ceremonial purposes, rather than for defense. Perhaps it's used as a way to drain blood from the victims that they bring to the metro station, though there's no evidence for this, so it's just a theory. Let's get started on the small guns, shall we? The first small guns weapon is the Backwater Rifle from Fallout 3's Point Lookout DLC. It is a unique variant of the lever-action rifle and can be found in the Chinese intelligence bunker near the Calvert Mansion. The Backwater Rifle is pretty solid. I'd argue one of the best rifles in the game even. For starters, it uses 10mm ammo, an extremely common ammo type in the Capital Wasteland. It hits for 45 damage per shot, and has a whopping 5 times crit modifier, making critical strikes pretty frequently if you have a high base crit chance. On top of this, it has nearly double the durability of the base lever-action rifle. Great rifle. So the term backwater has 2 meanings. One, it refers to a body of standing water, that which has little to no current. And 2, it can also refer to an area that is isolated and has no ongoing development, typically associated with a rundown town or county, and it just so happens that the Point Lookout area is both. The water is mostly standing, and the area doesn't really have anything going on there either, mostly due to the collapse of all society, I should add. And so to me it seems like a sort of double entendre. It's called the Backwater Rifle because it's found in a backwater area, but also because perhaps the rifle itself is backwater. Lever-action rifles have been around for hundreds of years, originating in the 1800s, and although these rifles did see combat in the US Civil War and Spanish Civil War, for example, they would end up being replaced by the cheaper bolt-action rifles. So there you go. Blackhawk. The Blackhawk is a unique scoped .44 Magnum that can be obtained from Agatha as a reward for bringing her the sheet music book during the side quest Agatha's Song. It is the only unique scoped .44 in the base game, and for that it's pretty good. It deals an additional 20 damage per shot, 55 vs 35, leading to an increase of 45 damage per second. So damage-wise it's quite stronger. Now, usually this comes with a cost to the current weapon's durability, and that is still the case for the Blackhawk, but to a lesser degree. The Blackhawk breaks down after firing 218 rounds compared to the standard Magnum's 229 rounds. I believe the Blackhawk is a reference to the Ruger Blackhawk revolver, manufactured by Sturm, Ruger & Co. While the initial design, released in 1955, was a .357 Magnum without a scope, a .44 variant released a year later, and the new model Super Blackhawk could come with a rib for mounting a scope. The Ruger Blackhawk was named after the Stutz Motor Car Company's Blackhawk automobile. Callahan's Magnum. Callahan's Magnum is a unique .44 Magnum that can only be obtained when the Broken Steel DLC is installed. The gun can be found in the ruins of the Citadel if the Lone Wanderer chooses to destroy it using the Enclave's mobile base crawler. It is the most powerful small guns handgun in the game. It deals 65 damage per shot, 65 versus 35, leading to 146.3 damage per second. On crits, it deals an additional 50 damage compared to the standard Magnum's 35 additional bonus damage. And again, like the Blackhawk, the durability is hardly any less than the standard Magnum. Callahan's Magnum breaks down after 205 shots compared to the normal 44's 229 shots. The weapon is in reference to Inspector Harry Callahan from the Dirty Harry movies. Dirty Harry's signature weapon was a Smith & Wesson Model 29 44 Magnum. Colonel Autumn's 10mm pistol. Colonel Autumn's 10mm pistol is a unique 10mm pistol belonging to Colonel Autumn. Surprising, isn't it? It can be found on his body at 100% condition. Compared to the default 10mm pistol, it's marginally better, dealing an additional 4 damage per shot, bringing its DPS to 78 versus 54. It also deals 4 more bonus damage on crits when compared to the standard 10mm, and can fire an additional 21 shots before breaking. And there's no real reference, it's just an important character's unique weapon. Lincoln's Repeater. Often touted as the best gun in the game, Lincoln's Repeater might also be the most unique. Technically, it's a unique lever-action rifle as they share similar appearance, but lever-action rifles don't exist in the base game, while obviously the Lincoln's Repeater does. Lever actions fire 10mm rounds, but the Lincoln Repeater fires 44. The weapon can be repaired by using hunting rifles, but the hunting rifle fires .32 rounds. It's just a truly unique weapon. It can be found in the Museum of History in a display case. When compared to the base lever-action rifle or hunting rifle, Lincoln's Repeater is the much better choice, boasting a DPS of 37.5, compared to the lever-action rifle's 30 and the hunting rifle's 18.8, and while the Lincoln Repeater doesn't have an outrageous 5x crit modifier like the lever action, it has a higher crit damage and a lower AP cost. The durability is pretty average, 500 compared to the lever action's 250 and the hunting rifle's 667. The weapon is a reference to the Henry rifle, a rifle that was gifted to Abraham Lincoln as a way to influence the president to purchase more rifles for the war effort. Ole Painless. Ole Painless is a unique hunting rifle belonging to President Dave of the Republic of Dave. It is located in a safe next to Dave's chair in the Republic of Dave Capitol building. Ole Painless deals an additional 5 damage when compared to the traditional hunting rifle, 30 versus 25, but its increased fire rate brings its DPS up to 33.8 compared to 18.8. It has a lower durability, however, 556 shots before breaking versus 667. So, Ole Painless shares a similar name with another fictional weapon. Blaine's minigun in the 1987 action sci-fi movie Predator is named Old Painless. Now, a minigun and hunting rifle vary quite a bit. A minigun is a lead-slinging hose of destruction, and a hunting rifle is a slower firing, but typically more accurate weapon. I'd like to believe that this contrast between the two is the developers making an intentional commentary on how Dave sees the world. The developers are forming a parallel between the Republic of Dave and a traditional country, and are using the difference between the two Old Painlesses to do that. My theory is that Dave sees his hunting rifle as a weapon of mass destruction, similar to that of a minigun. But the reality is that its destruction per second is quite a bit less, and this is similar to how Dave sees his land as a thriving, whole, and just nation, when the reality is that it's just a farm or small settlement with a bit more steps. Now, is this a stretch? Yeah, perhaps it is, but wouldn't it be a lot lamer if I just said it's called Old Painless because Dave liked the name or something? Paulson's Revolver. Paulson's Revolver is a unique 44 Magnum that is carried by the abducted cowboy Paulson in the Mothership Zeta DLC. It is the only 44 Magnum in the game that doesn't have a scope. His revolver is quite interesting. Instead of firing a single round per shot, it fires 9 pellets, each dealing 5 damage, totaling 45 damage if each pellet connects. This, combined with not having an additional crit bonus, puts Paulson's Revolver at 101.3 DPS versus 78.8. Also, it has the worst durability of all the 44 revolvers at 178 shots before breaking, compared to the standard 229. Again, it's just another important character's weapon of choice. The Perforator. The Perforator is a unique infiltrator from the Pit DLC. The Lone Wanderer will receive this weapon from Everett after handing in 90 steel ingots. Compared to the standard Infiltrator, the Perforator deals an additional 3 damage, 10 versus 7, and an additional 4 bonus damage on crits, 14 versus 10. It has a higher AP cost, putting its damage per AP cost at 0.7 compared to the Infiltrator's 0.9, and has worse durability, 1000 versus 1429. In addition to this, it has a much slower fire rate, 6 attacks per second versus 8. As for the reference, to perforate something is to pierce or punch a hole in something. A hole punch can also be known as a perforator. In steel manufacturing, machines can be used to punch patterns into sheets of metal, making perforated steel. This steel has a variety of uses such as light and sound manipulation. I'd imagine that the perforator weapon is a play on the machines that are used to punch holes in metal. Reservist's Rifle. The Reservist's Rifle is a unique sniper rifle carried by the Drifter in Dickerson Tabernacle Chapel. It is nearly identical in stats to that of the default sniper, except for ammo capacity, durability, and fire rate. The Reservist's Rifle holds 3 bullets compared to 5, can fire 125 times before breaking compared to 83, and fires 1.61 rounds per second compared to 1.07. I should also note that it costs a little less AP to use in VATS, putting its damage per action point at 1.3 versus 1.1. Now, a reservist is someone who is part of a military reserve force. They are otherwise civilians and have traditional careers outside of the military. They're called into service when required. I figure that this means that the rifle was once owned by a member of America's Reserve Army. Sydney's 10mm Ultra SMG. Sydney's 10mm Ultra SMG is the only unique 10mm SMG in the game. It is being carried by a relic hunter named Sydney. It can be obtained by dispatching her, letting her be dispatched, or completing the side quest, stealing Independence, and giving her a note from Little Moonbeam's father. If you want to use a 10mm SMG, definitely get this one. It only deals 2 additional damage per shot, but its ammo capacity makes it deal quite a bit of damage for every reload. If every bullet lands, in one reload, Sydney's SMG deals 450 damage, where the default SMG deals 210 damage per reload. Like many others, this comes at a cost to durability, 926 shots until breaking versus 1190. The name comes from 2 things. 1, it belongs to a notable character, and 2, it's a heavily modded weapon by Sydney herself. She tinkered with a typical 10mm SMG to make hers more lethal, I guess, and gave it that extended mag. The Kneecapper. The Kneecapper is a unique sawed-off shotgun carried by Ronald Laren of Girdershade. The resulting shotgun spread of the Kneecapper makes it deal 25 more damage than the standard sawed-off. However, interestingly enough, it has a lower fire rate, 1.88 rounds per second versus 2.25. Even still, the Kneecapper's DPS is still higher, 140.6 versus 112.5. The increased damage comes at a cost of durability, breaking after 111 shots versus the standard sawed-off's 167 shots. The weapon's name is a reference to the torture method of kneecapping someone. Kneecapping is typically when someone is shot in the knee with a gun. This was done quite a bit in Northern Ireland during the Northern Ireland conflict. This method of punishment was issued to drug dealers and other criminals at the hands of vigilante paramilitaries. The criminal was also shot in the ankles and elbows in what was called a six-pack. It's pretty grotesque, but that's how history is sometimes. Also, I should mention that you should not Google this. It's not something that most people would want to see. The Terrible Shotgun. The Terrible Shotgun is a unique combat shotgun carried by the non-hostile raider merchant Smiling Jack in Evergreen Mills. The Terrible Shotgun is the second highest damage small guns weapon in the game, but there's a catch. It only does the second most damage if all the pellets hit the target. This becomes especially tricky as it has double the spread of the base combat shotgun. These 2 qualities makes it most effective in close combat scenarios. Other than the increase in damage and spread, the Terrible Shotgun is just about the same as the normal combat shotgun in every other category, even durability. The Terrible Shotgun can be fired 146 times before breaking, compared to the standard combat shotgun's 145. So, the owner of the Terrible Shotgun, Smiling Jack, is a reference to the character of the same name in the game Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Former Fallout developers Tim Kaine and Jason Anderson both worked on the Masquerade Bloodlines. In the game, Smiling Jack is a jovial vampire who serves as a mentor and friend to many vampires. One of his pieces of advice is to watch out for shotguns, as they're more dangerous to vampires than any other gun. This inclusion of Smiling Jack and a unique shotgun could have been an homage to those who developed the franchise before Bethesda took over. The Victory Rifle. The Victory Rifle is the second unique sniper rifle found inside of a hard difficulty locked locker in the Sniper Shack unmarked location. It's kind of weird with how its stats work. So it has the same damage as the standard sniper, but on critical hits it knocks down the target for 2 seconds. The trade-off is that instead of having a 5x crit modifier, the Victory Rifle only has a 3x modifier. But good news, and a rare occurrence for this list, is that the Victory Rifle has 3 times the durability of a normal sniper, 250 shots before breaking compared to 83. And I hate to say this, but I'm actually unsure why it's called the Victory Rifle. Best thing I could theorize is that it was used in a previous combat encounter, perhaps pre-war, where the user survived and took the rifle home with them. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it has something to do with Mr. Keller, as his transcript can be found in the same location. I actually just don't know. If you have any theories or anything, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Wild Bill's Sidearm. Wild Bill's Sidearm is a unique .32 pistol that can be found on the corpse of Wild Bill in the pit steel yard. It's actually quite good relative to the standard 32, plus 4 damage resulting in a plus 12 damage per second. It also deals an additional 9 damage on crits, 15 versus 6, and another big surprise, it has more durability than the standard 32, 833 versus 556. It's not the worst gun. Wild Bill and his sidearm are likely a reference to the old American folk hero James Butler Hickok, or Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill was a soldier, scout, lawman, gambler, showman, and actor, famous for his many gunfights. In 1876, at the age of 39, Wild Bill was shot and killed while playing poker at a saloon. The hand that he had, 2 pairs, black 8s and aces, would go on to be known as the Dead Man's Hand. I should note that I can't find anything else that connects Fallout 3's Wild Bill with history's Wild Bill, outside of the names and Western Revolver. Schwann Long Assault Rifle. The Zhuan Long Assault Rifle is a unique Chinese assault rifle found on Prime's body in the diner near the Jury Street Metro station after the unmarked quest Jig's Loot has been completed. It's marginally better than the Chinese assault rifle. For the positives, it deals 1 additional damage and has 12 more bullets per magazine. For the negatives, it has worse durability and is worth fewer caps. 1,111 shots before breaking compared to the normal Chinese assault rifle's 1,212 shots. And 400 caps versus 500 caps. Excuse mistakes if any, as I'm not too familiar with Chinese culture, mythology, or folklore, but from what I gather, in Chinese classical writings, each one of the 4 dragon kings of the 4 seas is associated with a color and body of water that corresponds to one of the 4 cardinal directions. The black dragon, known as Hailong or Zhuanlong, is the dragon god of the north and essence of winter. His body of water is Lake Baikal. Zhurong V418 Chinese Pistol. The Zhurong pistol is a unique Chinese pistol that can be found in the CEO's office at the LOB Enterprises building. The Zhurong pistol is unique in that it has an incendiary effect. Each shot deals an additional 2 damage over 5 seconds, but overall it has less DPS than the standard Chinese pistol, 20 versus 24. This is due to its slower fire rate, 4.5 versus 6. But good news, it has a 2x crit modifier compared to a 1x of the Chinese pistol and can fire 1,667 shots before breaking, compared to the standard 1,250. It's alright, but don't use Chinese pistols, they're just not that good. Zhurong is the Chinese god of fire and ruler of the southern hemisphere. Simple as that, there you go. On to big guns. Eugene. Eugene is a unique minigun belonging to Riley Rangers member Brick and can be received as a reward for completing the Riley's Rangers unmarked quest. Eugene is one of the few unique weapons that has 0 downside. However, it only has 2 upsides, damage and durability. Eugene deals 2 additional damage per shot, bringing its DPS up to 140 from 100. As for durability, Eugene can be fired 3,571 times before breaking, compared to the standard minigun's 3,333 times. Eugene, while it offers no obvious reference to anything in particular, there are a few coincidences between Brick and Eugene Tackleberry from the Police Academy franchise. Both Brick and Officer Tackleberry are both trigger-happy in nature. They both use heavy arms, Brick using a minigun and Tackleberry using the biggest sidearm he could find, a .44 Magnum, and other large armaments as well. While these examples aren't the most concrete, like Ole Painless, it's more fun to speculate. The more likely explanation, or Occam's razor explanation, is that a developer probably just liked the name Eugene. Burnmaster. The Burnmaster is a unique flamer found in the Franklin Metro utility tunnels. Relative to the default flamer, it's pretty solid. It deals an additional 8 damage, bringing its DPS up to 194 versus the flamer's 130. Other than that, it shares the same stats as the normal flamer outside of durability. The Burnmaster can attack 139 times before breaking, compared to the default flamer's 208. But the thing that kinda sucks, or doesn't suck depending on how you look at it, is that the Burnmaster is unaffected by the Pyromaniac perk. So if you have Pyromaniac, don't bother using this flamer as the default flamer will actually be better. But if you don't have Pyromaniac, full send it on the Burnmaster if you'd like. What I'm trying to say is that the Burnmaster is essentially the normal flamer plus Pyromaniac, giving you a free perk whenever using the Burnmaster. Does that make sense? I hope so. As for a reference, the only thing I can find when googling Burnmaster or the Burnmaster or any sort of that variation, all the links I get are to wood burning kits. You know, those ones where you write fancy signs and such. And if I had to wager, I'd bet that this isn't what Bethesda was trying to reference with this unique Fallout 3 flamer. Drone Cannon EXB. The Drone Cannon EXB is a unique version of the drone cannon. It can be found in the southern area of the weapons lab aboard Mothership Zeta. So the EXB shares the exact same stats as the normal drone cannon. The only difference, however, is that instead of the projectiles exploding after a certain time, as is the case for the normal drone cannon, the projectiles instead explode on impact. It would seem that the Drone Cannon EXB is simply an experimental version of the standard drone cannon. Experimental Mirv. The Experimental Mirv is a unique Fat Man found in the National Guard Depot's vault, locked behind the Keller family transcript unmarked quest. So it should come as no surprise that the Experimental Mirv is technically the strongest weapon in the game. It's essentially a shotgun Fat Man hybrid shooting 8 mini-nukes with every pull of the trigger. I say technically strongest because it deals the same damage as the Fat Man per mini-nuke. So although each trigger pull on the Mirv is 8 times the damage of the Fat Man, it also consumes 8 times the ammo. The Mirv's weapon spread is also 6.5 times greater than the standard Fat Man, and can fire 103 fewer shots. So, Mirv is the term for multiple independent re-entry vehicle, and so what this is a ballistic missile payload that is carrying multiple warheads, each capable of being aimed at a different target. So the Mirv in real life can fire multiple warheads, and the experimental Mirv in Fallout can fire multiple mini-nukes. Miss Launcher. The Miss Launcher is a unique missile launcher found in the weapons storage room inside of Fort Independence. So the Miss Launcher, as expected, is a bit unique. It could be more aptly described as a grenade launcher, as the missiles do not explode on impact as one would expect, but rather after a timed detonation. The missiles fired are not propelled using fuel, but instead launched using some form of compressed gas. Because of this, the missiles, instead of following a linear path upon exiting the chamber, follow a parabolic path similar to that of a grenade launcher. Because the missiles still carry their undetonated fuel, in addition to their explosive warhead, it causes the Miss Launcher to deal more damage per second, 347 versus 268, but this comes at a cost to its accuracy and range. The inaccuracies, lack of precise shots, and poor range when using this unique missile launcher is what gives its unique name, the Miss Launcher, because most of the time, you'll be missing your shot. Precision Gatling Laser. The Precision Gatling Laser is a unique Gatling laser carried by the Armory Master aboard the Enclave's mobile base crawler. It is nearly identical to the standard Gatling laser outside of its increased crit chance modifier, 0.2 times versus 0.05 times, therefore the effectiveness of this weapon is highly dependent on your base crit. The precision in the name is just a reference to the weapon's improved crit chance multiplier. Rapid Torch Flamer. The Rapid Torch Flamer is a unique flamer that can be found in the Adams storage facility in the Broken Steel DLC. As the name suggests, the Rapid Torch Flamer is capable of firing its first shot a little bit quicker than the standard flamer. One trigger pull with the flamer expends 1 ammo, whereas with the standard flamer, the trigger needs to be held a little bit longer. This slight difference allows the Rapid Torch Flamer to conserve a bit more ammo than its standard variant. Other than that, the Rapid Torch Flamer and the normal flamer have the exact same stats. No real name reference outside of it referring to its quick start firing ability. Slow Burn Flamer. The Slow Burn Flamer is the last unique flamer in Fallout 3. It can be found on the upper level of the launch platform inside the Enclave mobile base crawler. Compared to the normal flamer, it deals 2 additional damage, does 6 more fire damage every 5 seconds, and can expend 23 fewer units of flamer fuel before breaking. And while the Slow Burn Flamer does hold the same amount of ammo per reload, 60 units of flamer fuel, it expends 3 fuel every trigger pull, making it a certified gas guzzler. I think the Slow Burn name refers to its increased fire damage, though, like the past 2 entries, there's no real reference when it comes to the name. Vengeance. Vengeance is our last big guns weapon on this list. It's a unique Gatling laser that can be found in the Deathclaw Sanctuary. It's a typical unique weapon, does more damage, but breaks faster. It deals an additional 3 damage per shot, 11 versus 8, and breaks after 3,030 shots versus the 3,125 of the standard Gatling laser. The only thing that I can think of is that it's some kind of play on the idea that the Enclave are getting vengeance on the Deathclaws in the Deathclaw Sanctuary, or maybe even the reverse. The fact that the Vengeance laser is found in a pool of dead bodies and blood is like the Deathclaw's form of revenge on the Enclave. If you've come up with something else, let me know. On to the energy weapons. A321's Plasma Rifle. A321's Plasma Rifle is a unique plasma rifle that can be rewarded to the Lone Wanderer after the completion of the Replicated Man side quest. Unsurprisingly, it's the best plasma rifle in the game, dealing an additional 5 damage, bringing its DPS up to 100 versus 90. It also has an additional 0.5 times crit modifier. That, plus its 6 additional damage on crits, makes it quite good if you've got a high base crit chance. And in another rare occurrence, A321's Plasma Rifle is also the most durable, breaking after 600 shots versus 500. Harkness, or A321, is the runaway android that Dr. Zimmer is looking for in Rivet City. This weapon is his plasma rifle. Atomic Pulverizer. The Atomic Pulverizer is a unique version of the Mothership Zeta DLC's Alien Atomizer. It is located in the weapons lab aboard Zeta. It deals 2 more damage than the standard Atomizer, resulting in a 6 DPS increase. This seems a bit measly until you realize that it has a 2 times crit modifier compared to the 1 times, and a lower AP cost, 12 versus 20. This allows the Pulverizer to crit more often and can fire more shots when in bats. In terms of durability, the Pulverizer breaks slightly faster, 676 shots before breaking compared to 714. This may seem really dumbed down or straightforward, but we'll go over it anyway. So, a pulverizer is a machine that is capable of grinding various materials. Typically, coal is pulverized for combustion in a coal power plant, and atoms are the basic unit of a chemical element, or in other words, they are the building blocks for the observable universe. We are made of octillions of atoms. The purpose of the atomic pulverizer would seem to be to grind or pulverize atoms. It makes sense when you realize that energy weapons have a chance to disintegrate their foes. The Captain's Sidearm is a unique alien blaster used by the alien captain in the Mothership Zeta DLC. Funnily enough, it actually deals less damage than the alien blaster, which maybe makes sense. I guess one could consider the alien blaster to be unique, but because a second can be obtained without exploits in Adams Air Force Base, the alien blaster doesn't count as unique. Anywho, the Captain's Sidearm shoots out like a shotgun, spraying 6 energy blasts towards the target. Each of these does 5.8 damage, and at 3 attacks per second, puts the Captain's Sidearm at 105 damage per second. For reference, the Alien Blaster deals nearly 3 times that at 300 damage per second. Good news though, it has the same durability as the Alien Blaster at 500 shots before breaking. The Captain's Sidearm is just another notable character's weapon of choice, this time being the Alien Captain. Colonel Autumn's Laser Pistol. Colonel Autumn's Laser Pistol is a unique laser pistol belonging to, you guessed it, Colonel Autumn. It is being carried by Colonel Autumn during the Take It Back main quest. The super weird thing about this weapon is that it is completely different if Broken Steel is installed. In the base game, relative to the default laser pistol, Autumn's is quite different. It deals 2 less damage, but because of its increased fire rate, 12 shots per second versus 6, its DPS is much greater, 120 versus 72. It can be fired 1,250 times before breaking, versus the standard laser pistol's 729. However, if Broken Steel is installed, the pistol is much different. It goes back to the default rate of fire, 6 shots per second, but the damage is increased, 18 damage per shot compared to 12. These changes put the Broken Steel Edition pistol at 108 damage per second. Now, without taking into account any crits, the broken steel version is worse, offering less damage per second. But with crits being counted, and if the Lone Wanderer has a high base crit rate, the broken steel version has a higher damage potential. But this also comes with a downside. The broken steel version can only fire 694 times before breaking. Again, like many other weapons belonging to characters, these pistols are simply Autumn's preferred energy weapons, no real reference. Destabilizer. The Destabilizer is a unique alien disintegrator found in the Weapons Lab shooting range aboard Mothership Zeta. The Destabilizer is a fully automatic version of the alien disintegrator, firing over twice as fast, 4.5 shots per second versus 2, but this comes at a cost. It deals 30 damage compared to 65. Even still, this puts the Destabilizer's DPS higher, 135 versus 130. The Disintegrator's crit stats are abysmal, dealing 20 bonus damage per crit, 20 versus 50, and having a crit rate of 0.44 times compared to 2 times. But it does have higher durability, 1250 versus 385. But overall, because it's only a slight damage increase, it's probably better to just use the default alien disintegrator, especially if you're a VATS player. Both of the Mothership Zeta weapons, the Atomic Pulverizer and now the Destabilizer, are in reference to terms that are simultaneously synonymous with destruction and used in science. Pulverize is to relentlessly destroy something. Atomic refers to the building blocks of the universe. Destabilize is to upset something that is stable or natural. In science, a substance is deemed stable when there is no particular reaction when in a standard environment. They're not really in reference to anything specific outside of being sciencey terms that can denote destruction. Fire Lance. The Fire Lance is a unique alien blaster that can only be obtained through a rare, random encounter. Sometimes it's easy to miss. It deals 80 damage compared to the Alien Blaster's 100, but it comes with a neat little fire damage over time effect that deals 2 fire damage every 5 seconds. Because of this, if the Lone Wanderer has the Pyromaniac perk, the Fire Lance becomes the better alien blaster. If no Pyromaniac, it's best to just use the alien blaster. I should note that the Fire Lance is one of the quickest weapons to break, breaking after 63 shots compared to the alien blaster's 125. The Fire Lance is a direct reference to Fallout's inspirational predecessor, Wasteland. For those who don't know, Wasteland is a 1987 computer role-playing game developed by Interplay and published by EA. In the original version of Wasteland, the game came with a printed booklet of stories. At certain points in the game, it would refer you to read one of these stories in order to get some backstory or hints or the likes. One of these stories talks about a Martian warlord who hands you an alien blaster called a Fire Lance. It's just another case where Bethesda is subtly making a reference to the previous Fallout developers' Interplay, and simultaneously the inspiration for the Fallout series, Wasteland. Gauss Rifle. The Gauss Rifle is a unique weapon found in the Outcast Outpost's locked armory after completing the Anchorage Reclamation simulation. It's some sort of one-of-a-kind sniper rifle. As it has nothing else to compare with it, I'll just go over some stats. It fires a single shot before having to reload that deals 100 damage. It has a 5 times crit modifier, and when it crits, it knocks the target down for 4 seconds. It can be fired 375 times before breaking. The major downside to this great weapon is that it has an abysmal reload speed at 2.3 seconds. Even still, it slaps. The Gauss Rifle from Fallout 3 is very likely a reference to the Gauss Rifle from Fallout 2. Both are extremely powerful and look quite similar. The Fallout 3 Gauss Rifle even includes a 2mm EC round on the side of the weapon, the ammo that the Fallout 2 Gauss Rifle used. If we look to real life, the Gauss Rifle is a coil gun that uses electromagnetic coils to accelerate a projectile to a high velocity. The name Gauss comes from mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss, who formulated the mathematical descriptions used by magnetic accelerator cannons like the Gauss Rifle. Metal Blaster. The Metal Blaster is a unique laser rifle from the Pit add-on. It is rewarded to the Lone Wanderer after bringing Everett 50 steel ingots. The Metal Blaster shotguns 9 laser beams that deal 6.1 damage each. If all the blasts meet their target, the Metal Blaster can deal up to 112.5 damage per second. It deals a little more bonus damage upon crits as well, but each beam can crit independently, 27 damage versus 22. However, these positives are met with 2 negatives. The weapon spread is a little wild, and the Metal Blaster can only be fired 455 times before breaking, compared to the default laser rifle's 1,087 shots. Like all the other The Pit weapons, This is yet another reference to steel manufacturing and manipulation. A metal blaster is like a saw that has its blade replaced with metal bristles. The purpose of this tool is to remove any sort of rust, corrosion, oxidation, adhesives, paint, you name it. It's sort of like a handheld sandblaster, which is also used to smooth rough surfaces. In a very different and maybe more likely vein, the weapon is in reference to the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, specifically the two characters Master and Blaster. Master refers to the metal master armor that Everett gives you for 40 ingots, Blaster refers to the metal blaster that Everett gives you for 50 ingots. In the movie, Master is the engineer responsible for Bartertown's electricity, and Blaster is Master's silent bodyguard. Mesmetron. The Mesmetron is a unique weapon given to the Lone Wanderer as part of the Paradise Falls quest Strictly Business. It's not really made for combat and deals a single point of damage. Instead, on hit, the weapon has a 50% chance to mesmerize the target, 30% chance to frenzy the target, and 20% chance for spontaneous cranial eruption. The name is in reference to what it does. The Mesmetron mesmerizes people, forcing them to transfix their full attention to the person who used the weapon on them. Could also be equally in reference to countless of sci-fi media that makes use of any form of mind control. For example, The Manchurian Candidate is a 1962 movie based on a 1959 novel of the same name. It's about a Korean War veteran that was brainwashed by members of the People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union into becoming an assassin. While there are no explicit references to this story in Fallout, at least in terms of the Mesmetron, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that this is the type of media, things that share anti-communist messaging and perpetuate the Red Scare, that the game developers would use as inspiration when making Fallout. Microwave Emitter. The Microwave Emitter is a unique Mesmetron rewarded to the player after beating the main quest line for Point Lookout. And unlike the Mesmetron, this one was made for combat. It deals 60 damage, ignores the target's damage reduction, and has a 2x crit rate with 100 bonus crit damage, and costs 30 AP to fire. But it can only be fired 375 times before breaking. Good choice against armored enemies. I guess the idea with this weapon is that it does damage by projecting concentrated microwaves towards the target. This kind of weapon actually has real world uses, which is kinda neat. They're mostly used for riot control. I'll go over a few. So there's the active denial system. This thing uses microwaves to heat the water in a human skin, causing severe pain. I think Modern Warfare 3 had this as a kill streak or something. There's also the Bofors HPM Blackout that can destroy a variety of commercial electronic equipment. And then there's the anti-drone gun, which severs the connection between the drone and the drone's operator, causing the drone to crash. I don't know, just some real-world microwave-emitting weapons. MPLX Nova Surge. The MPLX Nova Surge is a unique plasma pistol located in the cargo hold of Mothership Zeta. It's like turbo-cracked. It fires 2 shots per trigger pull, dealing a whopping 240 damage per second compared to the standard plasma pistol's 75. It has a 3x crit modifier versus 2x, and deals 50 more bonus damage on crit. However, because it fires twice, it uses double the ammo, weighs twice as much, and breaks after 188 shots versus 400 shots from the normal plasma pistol. So the MPLX part of the name means Military Plasma Experimental, indicating that this weapon was an experimental version of the plasma pistol, a prototype. A nova is an astronomical event that causes a sudden bright appearance of an apparently new star that slowly dims over weeks or months. And a surge, as it pertains to electricity, is a sudden marked increase in voltage or current in an electric circuit. Pair these two together, and I would surmise that the Nova Surge works by hurling a much larger blast of energy towards the target than a normal plasma pistol. A note by Dr. Aldwin Morley confirms this. Morley was the lead scientist on the Enclave's prototype plasma pistol dubbed the Nova Surge. He writes, "The output is still very high, causing massive injury to the target, but it's drawing far too much power from its energy cells." Protectron's Gaze. The Protectron's Gaze is a unique laser pistol belonging to the Mechanist. It is given to the Lone Wanderer after bringing the Mechanist the Anti-Agonizer's armor. The unique pistol fires 5 independent beams that deal 4.8 damage each. This, combined with its slower fire rate, makes it match the standard laser pistol's DPS of 72. From what I gathered, this weapon acts a bit weird when in VATS. Outside of VATS, each beam can crit independently, making this weapon great for high crit builds and bringing its potential damage way up. But inside of VATS, the beam can only crit once per trigger pull, significantly dropping its potential damage. It can fire 521 shots before breaking, compared to the 729 shots of the normal laser pistol. This weapon is in reference to Bean Walensky's, or the Mechanist's, loyal Protectron companion. After an attack by the Antagonizer, the Mechanist's best buddy lay destroyed. The Mechanist would go on to craft the Protectron's gaze out of the bot's remains. Smuggler's End. Smuggler's End is another unique laser pistol found locked inside Elder Lion's personal safe. It is actually identical in stats to that of Colonel Autumn's Broken Steel laser pistol, 108 DPS, 1.5 times crit modifier, 17 AP cost, except it weighs 1 pound less. I found a lot of discourse in the discussion page of this weapon's Fallout wiki article regarding Star Wars, but I'm not sure I really follow the connection. I know that Han Solo is a smuggler, but where would the end part come into it? It doesn't really make much sense to me, and I feel as though the intentional inclusion of a Star Wars reference would be more obvious, right? Rather, this weapon could be more so in reference to Elder Lion's beliefs when it comes to the East Coast Brotherhood of Steel's teachings and humanitarian efforts. The Brotherhood of Steel was never really about protecting the wasteland, but scouring it for old world technology. Lyons changed this within his chapter of the Brotherhood. They would attempt to restore order to the capital wasteland. Instead of ruin diving for old technology, they would instead attempt to restore order to the capital wasteland. As smuggling is associated with unlawfulness and illicit activities, perhaps Smuggler's End is serving as a warning to those who wish to sow chaos in the capital wasteland. You know, don't be bad or else my laser pistol will be your end, or something like that. Let me know what you think. And lastly, after this crazy long list, is the Wazer Rifle. The Wazer Rifle is a unique laser rifle belonging to Biwi. He will part with his gun for 500 caps as he has since been kicked out of Little Lamplight's scavenging team and no longer needs a gun. 500 caps is a steal for this bad boy, as it is the strongest base game laser rifle. It deals 6 additional damage, putting its damage per second at 59.3 versus 47. It deals an additional 6 bonus damage on crits, 28 versus 22, has 6 more ammo capacity, 30 versus 24, and better durability, breaking after 1552 shots versus 1087. One of the few cases where it's just better all around. The only downside is that it has a slightly larger spread, 1.7 versus 1.4, and is worth less caps, 900 versus 1000. Great gun nonetheless. Because Billy has a speech impediment, he pronounces his L's and R's as W's, thus making the laser rifle the Wazer Rifle. If you stuck around the whole time, I really appreciate it. This took me forever to script and make, and I hope you like it. Nothing more from me today. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
Hello, I'm Billy. Welcome to Whittle Lamplight. Hey, you look like you're handy with the weapon. I got kicked off the scav team, so I guess I don't need mine anymore. Wanna buy my Wazer Rifle? 500 caps, and it's all yours. That's a great idea. You take it, and good luck out there.